Okay, hello, and welcome on in, everybody. I hope you are having a lovely day so far. In today's video, we are talking about the Thunder Cage, possibly one of the meta top tier weapons that you can have in the first Descendant for many reasons. But we are covering what it's like to have this weapon in the Void Purge. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen the latest patch where they brought up now stages 21 up to 30 for the Void Purge. And I will tell you that it is a major step up from the previous 0 to 20 that we had. You won't feel it as much, most likely, but like through 21 to 25. But in my case, and I think in a lot of cases, people started feeling the crunch once we hit 26 and upwards. Now 26 is where it scales a bit, and then for some reason 27 is a walk in the park, and I don't understand why, but we are not going to complain. And then your next little speed bump that you will hit will be over at 28. Obviously there's a lot of videos and bold recommendations out there that you can go and have a look at, and can tell you what team composition is best to run for it. If you're running it solo, what is best to run for it. But today's video is just going to be around our lovely Thunder Cage. In case you wanted to know whether or not you need to invest in putting a core into this, or whether you need to put your catalyst, your hard-earned catalysts, the answer is yes to everything. But before we can get into the actual build of the weapon, we have to just go through some of the basic things, right? So you have your basic stats of your weapon, but this is not what we are really looking for. This is just so that you can understand what your weapon's base stats are like and when it's improved, etc. But if we go over to the unique ability for this weapon, it's called Overcharge. Now, Overcharge is when defeating an enemy, the defeated enemy has a set chance to discharge electric shockwave, which deals additional damage to nearby enemies. So off the bat, this is more of a mobbing weapon or ad clear weapon, whichever term you prefer to use, and it does that very well. So as you shoot your weapon, when you kill an enemy, there's going to be this explosion that happens, and that explosion will have the additional damage of 200% of your firearm damage that you currently have on your weapon. So it will basically give you 3 times the damage of your firearm weapon when it does the discharge. So it's very good for clearing out multiple mobs that are grouped up together. The radius isn't that big, it's only a 5-meter radius. Keep in mind this is at max. So, but aside from that, we're not really talking about the mobbing potential of the Thunder Cage. That is not what we're here for. What we are here for is the fact that Thunder Cage works so well, so well with Haley. And yes, there are other weapons that are better for Haley, like the Albion Cavalry, which is just an insanely good weapon. There's a lot of weapons that suit or are better suited for different activities that you do in the game. But a lot of people, I think, are sleeping on Thunder Cage. Aside from solo gameplay through the Void Purge, if you're playing in a 2-man, 3-man or 4-man team, I feel like the Thunder Cage can come into its own there, right? If you're on Haley, by all means, you could use something like the Albion Cavalry and it will do crazy things, but you could also use something like the Thunder Cage. And the reason why I say that is because when you cut this thing out, and as you can see, I have my firearm attack is at 10. My first 2 augments on it are both X, like both 10s. That one is 65, 172. The max you can get is 80, so I'm not too far off it. And then I opted for critical hit damage because we want to make sure that our crits are hitting for the most damage we possibly can. If you didn't know, this weapon is crafted for critical hits. Yeah, so the reason we have chosen the Thunder Cage is because we have built it up for crits. This weapon works very well with crit damage, and you can scale it quite high because it does have a base stat of 20% critical hit rate, which you can scale, which is why we use mod subs like Better Insight and then Insight Focus. Those are the 2 mods that we are using. But just to break it down for you, you have your basic must go on every weapon, I feel, In most cases, there can be a slight change between rocket launchers and shotguns, but generally with your ARs, with your machine guns, with your submachine guns, with your tactical rifles, you generally start off action reaction. That is going to be your first one. Then fire rate up. Like obviously the faster you can fire, the more damage you will end up doing. So we will take fire rate up. And then the last of the three is rifling reinforcement rounds. So we want to make sure that we have that as well. So that is your bread and butter on most of your builds. And as you can see, we went from 560,000 DPS. Automatically we go up to 1.3 million almost, just by using these three mods alone. After you have your bread and butter with it, you want to start going into things that will help your weapon to the best of its base abilities, right? So we know that the Thunder Cage has a high crit hit rate, so we want to scale into that. So the two things we'll be focusing on the most here is crit hit rate and crit hit damage. So automatically you're going to most of your catalysts in your weapon are going to be Almadine. So you will have, first of all, better insight, which will increase our skill critical hit rate, our firearm critical hit rate by 39%, better concentration, and that will give you 74.8% increase in your critical hit damage. Now that we have that sorted out, we need to start looking at other things. And the next thing we need to look at, after we have looked at the two base crit hit rate and crit damage output, you start looking at expanding your magazine size. So here you have expand weapon charge, which makes your rounds per magazine extra 49%. We're definitely going to want that. And then we'll go for its big brother as well, concentrate support ammo. So there's a few different ones you can choose here, right? So if you type in magazine, you will have quite a few different options. You have consume magazine, have inside support ammo, and this is all up to your choice. Whatever your weapon build is currently like, that is what you are going to choose for your weapon. For me personally, because I'm built into crit damage and crit hit rate, I chose concentrate support ammo because it gives me extra rounds per magazine, and it will give me an extra 6.5% on my critical hit damage. I don't care about the hit rate, my hit rate is fine. The compulsive magazine will have your increased mag size, but then the last bit of it changes on each one. So support ammo was firearm critical hit damage. Compulsive magazine will give you weak point damage increase. The weight magazine will weak point damage increase as well. And then there's one more. Okay, this one gives you firearm attack, and then inside support gives you firearm critical hit rate. The important thing to note about this before you spend any resources and upgrading any of your modules is that the only thing that changes between the two options that it gives you in there, so it gives you the rounds per magazine and it gives you your alternate option based off what you chose, right? Only the first one changes. So the more you upgrade it, only the first changes. Like in the case of insight support ammo, your rounds per magazine will go up to the max, which is here 30%. So you'll get a 30% increase to your rounds per magazine, but your firearm critical hit rate will stay at 1.5. That will not increase. I can show you this as well. So here you can see I have a fully decked out one that gives me 30% increase to my magazine size and 6.5 to my critical hit damage. But here is one that is not fully decked out, and the only thing that has changed is the 30% that changed to a 25.8%. So you want to make sure that you keep that in mind before upgrading anything. Don't think that, oh, this is a weak point damage of plus 2%. If I upgrade it, it might get higher. No, only the first bit of it will change. Like as you can see here, the critical hit even on 0 stacks put into this is still on a 6.5. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, so the next thing we're going to put on is going to be concentrate support ammo. So now that we have those covered and we have that covered, what we need to think about next is adding further on into our crits. So automatically we can go to Almadine and we can start looking at things that will make the weapon hit harder with crit damage. The very first thing that I would always tend to go for on submachine guns and ARs, it's not the same on every weapon type, so be very careful when you choose this, is the concentration priority, because this gives you an extra 120% hit damage at the cost of 30% reload speed. So you will reload 30% slower, but you will do 120% more critical hit damage, which is amazing. You would like to pair that with anything else that you can. I would most likely go for something like inside focus, because inside focus gives you more critical hit rate. There isn't really anything else that can give you extra damage that would be worth it, in my opinion. This gives you hit rate and it gives you critical hit damage, which is amazing. You built your weapon into both of that, so you put that one on there as well. The very last slot is completely up to you. Most cases I like to leave one slot open so you can slot in an ultimate mod. Let's say you want to have sharp precision shot on here, let's say you want to have fire in fiesta on here. It's all up to you. If you are doing high end activities that require elemental damage, you can do something like putting on a elemental mod, so any enhancement mod, so you can put your fire, your toxic, your electric, your chill. As you can see, we are currently sitting from 540,000 damage per second. We are sitting on a 3.4, nearly 3.5 million damage per second, and that is amazing. But another way that you can go, remember, because you are doing things like the void erosion purge, there are going to be certain elements that the enemies are weak to. So you'll see in 26, which is the one that people are struggling with the most, the enemies are weak to chill and they are normal to electric. But as you go on further, the enemies will be weak to a different element. If you want to build the weapon and you want to use it in the purge and you want to be able to make it versatile, which is why I left the slot open, is because you can always just say, I'm going to take out the extra magazine size and sacrifice some damage, and what I'm going to do is chill enhancement. There we go. So now I have chill enhancement on, so that I can actually take on those enemies that are weak against chill. And then because I have another 6 slots here, I don't know what else that is, malachite, that could maybe go on there. You could maybe go focus fire, which increases your weak point damage and your critical hit damage, which is perfectly fine. And here you have a fully decked out Thunder Cage hitting for 3.3, nearly 3.4 million. So you sacrifice about 100 to 130,000 damage per second. But I feel in cases like the in-game activities and the more difficult content like the void purges, having an elemental mod on helps a lot more because they are weakened by it. On top of that, a lot of people are forgetting that you also have your inversion reinforcement, and there's a lot of options here and people don't understand it as well. So I think in this video I will just cover it so that you guys can be made aware of how this thing works, right? So first of all, you have to get it fully decked out. This is a must in my opinion, and you should always be looking at your inversion reinforcement before going into an activity. If you're just farming for something, if you just farming a boss, if you're just farming a 400% dungeon where it's not as needed, I wouldn't say it's important. But when you are actually going into void purges, every bit of HP helps, every bit of damage helps. Like, you won't understand. It could be the make and break between you finishing an activity with 5 minutes left or just going a couple seconds over. And people, the one thing I've noticed is that people don't fully understand how the passives work, right? So you'll see, once you've unlocked the entire row, at the end of the row there will be a passive, and people think that this passive is just automatically applied. Unfortunately, that passive is not applied all the time. So the passive at the end will only be applied if you have selected one of the 4 in the previously in the row. So for argument's sake, if I deselect chill focus rounds, I will not get the benefits of this passive. I only get the benefits of these 2 because I have something highlighted for you. But yeah, before you go into a void or into any in-game high level difficulty activity, you want to make a stop by your inversion reinforcement, and you want to select the appropriate attribute so you can be doing more damage. So now you will automatically, because the chill round says that on hitting an enemy with a firearm, grants chill focus rounds, adds chill attack equal to 4.8% of firearm attack for 30 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times. When changing weapons, it removes the chill focus round. So what that means is that you can take any weapon, whether you have a chill, a fire, a toxic, it doesn't matter. Any weapon that you shoot an enemy with, if you land a bullet, it's going to give you 1 stack. If you land 5 bullets, which is the max stacks, it will give you the max stack. It stacks up to 5 times, so that 4.8% will be times 5. Your inversion reinforcement will take 25% of that, and it will add it as chill attack, so you'll be doing additional damage just for clicking this thing here. And then what it does on top of that, because you've activated something in the attribute section, it will then unlock the ability to use the enhanced focus rounds, and this is when at max focus round stacks, grants enhanced focus rounds. Enhanced focus rounds on hitting an enemy with a firearm grants bypass immunity, and this is a very, very crucial part about this, is the fact that when you are in an activity like the Void Purge Erosion, you're looking for every bit of damage you can get. And what this says is that when you hit an enemy 5 times, which you're going to be shooting an enemy a lot, so you're always going to be at max stacks most of the time, you will bypass their immunity, which means that bypass immunity is all attribute resistance minus 4% for 30 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times as well. So again, you have a 4 times 5. That is going to give you a 20% reduction in the resistance to your attacks. While at face value it doesn't look like a lot, but if you use an attack by Ines, for argument's sake, and her attack does 200,000 damage, if you use her 1 and it hits you and it does 200,000 damage, what this mod says is that because you will be at max stacks, which is 5, which is a 20% reduction in the resistance, 20% of that 200,000 will be done as extra damage. So instead of hitting for 200,000, you'll be now hitting for 20% more of that. So you're going to hit for 220 or 230,000, whatever the case may be. And if you add that extra 20-30,000 on each hit, after spamming your 1 on Ines for 50 million hours in a purge, that is going to amount to a lot of extra DPS that you're getting just for doing the things you usually would do. So yeah, don't sleep on the fact that you could get some great value out of this. But remember, you only get bypass immunity when you are at max stacks. And how do you get to max stacks? You get to max stacks when you shoot an enemy. So it's very easy to get there. You don't have to consciously think about it. Like, you could just play the game normally and you will have it. And it says it lasts for 30 seconds. But remember, it does not have a cooldown. So if I shoot an enemy 5 times, I will be at 5 stacks, and then that lasts for 30 seconds. If I want to 15 seconds into that 30 seconds shoot the enemy again, it will refresh it. But I don't have to shoot the enemy 5 times again, because you're already at the max stack. Shooting just 1 bullet against the enemy will refill your stacks and will put it back up to 5 again, and it will refresh your full 30 seconds. So it's very easy to use. You don't have to think about it. You can just go through the activity the way you usually would, and you'll be able to get your value out of it. Now, the reason why the Thunder Cage pairs so well with Hailey is because Hailey is one of the best gun characters now, because she has a shield build and you can do a lot of things with her. You can be in your infinite with your 3, but let's talk about it. Your 3 is the ability that you're going to be using with Hailey. You will be popping your 3rd ability, and this will give you Cold Fury, and it says grants Hailey Cold Fury every second. The Cold Fury effect gradually decreases of movement speed but greatly increases of firearm and skill critical hit rates and firearm penetration. When Cold Fury reaches max stacks, Hailey becomes immune to knockdown and gains an increase to a firearm and critical hit damage. However, when using a roll or grappling hook, the stacks decrease. It decreases by like 3 when you roll, and it goes back up to 16 in no time. So I wouldn't care too much about that, no. But on the right hand side here, this is the reason why it's so crazy on her. The max stacks that you can get for this is 16, as you can see there, and then it tells you that per stack you get a critical hit rate increase of 2.5%, firearm penetration increase amount as well, 20%, or not 20%, by 20. I'm not entirely sure what that means. I'm not going to pretend like I do know, but that is not the number that we are really focusing on right now. We are just focused on the fact that you get 2.5% critical hit rate increase, and at 16 stacks that is going to be close to 50%, like 50% increase, which if you're looking at the Thunder Cage that you built up for critical damage, so that is why Haley works so well with guns or weapons that you build into crit and critical hit rate and critical hit damage. But aside from the critical hit rate increase, you will also get critical hit damage increase, and it's a base 20%. Like, it doesn't work with the stacks or anything like that, so that is fine. And on top of that, you will get a skill critical hit damage as well. So aside from using her with weapons, you could use her with her abilities, but that is an entirely different build that doesn't work with the gun build that we have. I don't have my Haley like fully done. I'm still missing like I would say 3 to 4 catalysts on her before I can have everything that I want to have on here. But you have the general build that you would have for shields, right? You would have your double HP mods, which is just an accelerant and you increase HP. You would have your double increase shield, which is increased shield and HP conservation. Overwhelming shield, which will fix your max HP to 1, but then that is where you get the boost in your shield value. Walker tightrope, whenever using overwhelming shield, you never ever want to run it without walker tightrope, because this is just instant damage increase, no matter whether if you're using your skills or if you're using your weapon. This is just going to be active. It does not have a cooldown, and it reads that when you are 50%, when your HP is 50% or lower, your skill power modifier is increased by 30%. But that is not what we're looking at for this specific build. We are looking at the firearm attack increase of 30%. That is going to give you even more damage on top of your weapon. We're going to have maximized conservation, because this is going to reduce our skill cost, along with strong mentality, because while you are in a 3, it will tell you there the MP cost per second while you are in a 3. Oh no, the MP cost to activate it is 5.9, and then continuous MP cost interval is every cycle, which is like every 1 second, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, instead of the cost being 10, it will be 4.9. What this basically translates to when you have these on is that you could be in your third ability for a ridiculously long time. So you would be able to just constantly have that 20% increase to your critical hit damage and that 50 something % increase to your critical heat rate as well. Then I have biosync shield here, so that when you pick up health orbs, instead of giving you health, we'll give you shields, which is obviously needed on this because we don't have any health. So it's going to give us the shields, and this is the only way that you can recover shields, by picking up a health orb. The other option you have is shield collector, and what shield collector will do is when you defeat an enemy, it will just give you 6.3% of your max shield, and it has a 2-second cooldown, which is ridiculous, don't get me wrong. If you are playing anything solo, I would suggest that you go for shield collector, but when playing in a group, I prefer to use biosync shield. And then the very last mod, you can go for more skill cost. I don't even know if it's possible, but I feel like this is the essential bit of the build that you are going to need. Your reactor does not matter at all, like, because you are using it for gun damage. You're not using it for skill damage, so you don't have to worry about substats. You don't have to worry about if it's the right optimization condition. It's got nothing to do with your skills. Your reactor is more focused around skill damage and amplifying your skill damage. The only thing that we are looking for in the substat is skill cost, and preferably you could have, you could have cooldown. I don't think it would make much of a difference, but you could if you wanted to. But skill cost, I would say, is the most important subset that you would have there, because that would pay well, so that costs you even less to go into your 3 with Haley, and you could just stay in there forever and ever and ever. For the external components, we're going to be running double HP on auxiliary. This is the only component that can roll with double HP. You cannot roll double HP on any of the other components, so you want to make sure that you have a auxiliary power that has max HP as a base stat, and then in the substats you want to have max HP as well. For the sensor, because we are going to stay in our 3 with Haley, we want to have the most MP as possible, so we're going to have a gold MP. I don't know if this is the best one. I think no, on my auxiliary I had a better one. I had a gold HP, but I somehow lost it. But yeah, you want to have max HP as your base stat and then max MP as one of your substats. For your memory, the very same thing. You want to have max HP and MP recovery modifier. And then for the last one, you can't have any MP on your processor, so the next best thing to go for is shield. So you want to have max HP with max shields. That is going to be the full build with the Thunder Cage on Haley. It does crazy amounts of damage. Go and give it a try and let me know if there's anything crazy that you came about in the comments.